and thanks for joining. If you're new here, I'm Wendy and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at garage sales, flea markets, thrift stores, just about anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Today's video is going to be what sold for January 28th through February 3rd. Let's get started. The first thing that we sold was some calligraphy artwork by the artist Rachel Joy Colvin. It was designed to go in a nursery. It was called the Sugar Plum Tree. It sold for $27.99. We actually have several more of this exact artwork that we got from the other business that we own, which is a custom picture frame shop. We sold it for our asking price. Next up was a women's jumpsuit. It was a black belted asymmetric button jumpsuit that belonged to me. That sold for $19.99. I can't remember if that was our asking price or if that was a best offer, but you'll see what our listed price was over on this tile over here. Unfortunately, that was returned to us. When it got returned, it smelled very badly of cigarette smoke. So I don't know if the buyer wore it or if I know that when it was returned, like she opened the return and it took weeks for it to actually get returned to us. So it may have just been in an environment that had a lot of cigarette smoking in it. So unfortunately, that's, something that you kind of have to deal with sometimes. I did report the buyer for returning an item that was not in the same condition that it was when it went out. I opted not to do any kind of discount on it because this is not something that I can't overcome. It was not a new item. I can wash it, I can get the smell out, and I just didn't want to risk negative feedback. It wasn't worth dealing with the trouble. I just blocked that buyer and reported her. So it's just a pain for me to deal with, but it wasn't worth it for me to take any further action other than doing that. But that's something that you risk when you accept returns, I think, as a seller. So we are going to wash that item, make sure that we get the smell 100% out before we relist it. If not, I'll just donate it. Definitely not worth it to me to list anything that potentially has any flaws like that. Next up was a lot of 2 Victoria's Secret size medium gray and black bandeau bralettes. We had gotten these at a garage sale. They were new. One of them was new with tags, and the other one was obviously new with tags. It still had the plastic part of the hang tag on there, but the paper part had just been torn off probably. So they were definitely 100% new. I didn't list them as new with tags. I just listed them as new, and I described what I just described to you guys in the condition details. Those sold for $31.18, and we had paid just $2 for those, and those sold on offer to buyer. Next up was a vintage package of Lucky Strike extra soft super action bait fishing lures. Those were new in the package. They had never been opened. They were new old stock. We had gotten those in an estate sale inside of a tackle box, and the tackle box was damaged. We just put that on the side of the road and somebody picked it up. We might have been able to sell that tackle box because it was like a vintage Plano tackle box, and I know that those do well, but it had a big crack in it, and I just didn't want to mess with it. I just do not like to sell stuff that has damage on it like that because I just feel like that opens me up to INAD claims, and most of the time I just don't list stuff like that, so somebody did pick it up off the side of the road immediately. But these lures sold for $12 even on best offer, and we had paid just 36 cents for those. We still have several packages of lures that we got out of that tackle box. Next up was a lot of 4 infant toys. It included a shaker, a rattle, a Mickey Mouse plush car, and a peekaboo ball. And we had gotten those out of a thrift store toy bag. We had paid 46 cents in total for all of them, and we sold those for our full asking price of $18.99. One thing to note, when I list baby toys, like infant toys, I always put them through my dishwasher. I put them through at least one cycle of the dishwasher to make sure that they're fully sanitized, and then I will list them as fully sanitized and say that I ran them through the dishwasher so that the buyer can buy them with confidence, knows that they've been fully sanitized. And then they can, you know, sanitize them further if they want to, but they know that they're getting something that has been cleaned. So I'm not going to sell something to someone as an infant toy without cleaning it myself. As a mom, I would, that's how I would feel about it. So that's what I do on my end. I feel like that's the safest way to go about it. Let me know what you do if you sell infant toys, how you would sanitize them, but that's how I do it. Next up was a genuine sharp power supply cord. This was for a monitor power supply cord. We had gotten this at a rummage sale. We got a big bag of electronics cords, and it was just like a rat's nest of electronics cords. And we think we paid like maybe $5 or $10 for the bag in total, but you know, there was just so much quantity in there. It was like, okay, we'll be able to make our money back on it. And we already have, like a long time ago we did. So this was in there and we sold it for $18 even on best offer. We had paid 27 cents for it. We shipped this out at a time when there was like an ice storm in Texas. We live in Texas and we shipped this out when there was an ice storm. And so it kind of got delayed in shipment, and the buyer contacted us and said, you know, that they hadn't gotten it. Where was it? And it's like the tracking had just kind of stopped. And so I filed a claim. The buyer was very nice about it. So I let the buyer know, oh, let me file a claim through USPS. Usually that kind of nudges them into getting the tracking picked back up. And so when I did that, it immediately got the tracking picked back up, and the buyer received the package the next day. So I don't really know how that works, but usually that will work. So just a tip if you ever have that issue, and it has to have been 7 days for this to work with USPS. Like it has to have been 7 days late. The package has to have been 7 days late. Then you file that "Where's my mail" report on USPS.com, and somehow it'll just kind of nudge that package back into the tracking circulation and get things moving on it. So this worked for that, and the buyer received their package, and then I usually just respond to the claim through eBay and upload the tracking and say, good news, it looks like your package has arrived. Thank you so much. Please confirm that you've received your package by closing this case. And they usually do, and then that's the end of that. And if they don't do that, eBay will close the case in your favor anyway if it shows that the package has arrived through tracking. So you're covered either way. But the buyer did end up closing the case and giving us positive feedback, so that was good news. And the other nice thing that happened is USPS actually called me to follow up to make sure that everything was good with the missing package, and I thought that was a nice extra step from USPS. Next up was a genuine Barbie brand brown, black, and ivory sheer halter tie neck sundress. So I had gotten this out of a bag of toys that I got from someone off of Facebook Marketplace. I paid 67 cents for this, decided to list it individually because it was a really cute little Barbie dress. It sold for a full asking price of $9.99. Next up was a Chris Christopherson Me and Bobby McGee vinyl record. We got that at an estate sale for 30 cents, and it sold for a full asking price of $10.99. Next up was a bottle of Avon California perfume in the scent White Lilac. This was a brand new, unused bottle. Please note that you cannot sell used, half empty, half full, half anything bottles of perfume on eBay anymore. You can only sell perfume bottles if they are full and unused or 100% empty. That is something that eBay is cracking down on, so please make sure that you follow that rule. People are getting suspensions and restrictions from doing that, so just make sure that you are following those rules. This bottle was new and unused, unopened, so we were able to keep it listed. And it did sell for $19.99. We had gotten this in the Goodwill bins when we were playing Bins Bingo, and we had paid $1.18 for it. We got positive feedback on that. Next up was a vintage beater lac acrylic and cotton blanket it was made in Germany. We had gotten this at an estate sale. We paid $5 for it, and it sold for an offer to buyer of $50.38. Next up was a vintage lot of 4 National Geographic magazines. They all had different space themes. We had gotten these when we had responded to a curb alert. And when we showed up to the curb alert to pick up everything, most of the stuff in that curb alert were space themed books. And so we have sold a lot of the things from that curb alert. Most of the space themed books have sold. And so these finally sold for $12.99. We had no cost involved because it was just a free pickup off the curb. Next up was one of the toner cartridges that I got from a toner liquidation. A guy who owns a local toner store was offloading a lot of his old merchandise, and we had purchased a large quantity of off-brand toners for like $400, and this was one of them. And we still have a bunch of them left, but we've sold a lot of them. This was one of them. It doesn't say what brand it was for, but it has all the different numbers that someone would need to look up what it was. They paid full price of $19.99 for it, and I had paid $3.19 for this one. Next up was a Gymboree girls top in the style Love Struck Sweetie. It was a Valentine's theme from December 2012. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, Gymboree always sells for me as long as I put the style and the month and year of when it was from. So this one I think might have had a couple of spots on it. I think this one belonged to my daughter. Yeah, it did. This one belonged to my daughter and was a hand-me-down, so we had no cost associated with it. This one sold for $14.99. But if I see Gymboree in the Goodwill bins or even, at a garage sale or something like that and can get it for the right price, I will pick it up because Gymboree is a consistent seller for me. Next up was something else that belonged to me. This was something that was mine and I had it listed forever and I sold it for very, very cheap because it was not moving and I just wanted to get rid of it. This was a Tech Gear women's charcoal gray athletic hoodie. It sold for $11.98 on offer to buyer. I just wanted that out of the store, so we had that listed for probably 4 to 5 years. Next up was a vintage 1978 Texas turkey or armadillo slide puzzle by American Publishing Corp. We got that in a toy bag for just 18 cents. It sold pretty quickly for $15.98. When I was researching this, I saw that these vintage slide puzzles by this brand, American Publishing Corp, had a pretty good sell-through rate. So if you ever see these, I would pick them up for the right price. Next up was a 2018 Pokemon PVC figurine of the character Meowth, the yellow cat. This we got at a garage sale in a bag of Pokemon items. We paid $1 for this figure. We had paid $5 in total for the bag. So I had broken down our cost and said we paid $1 for this figure. It sold pretty quickly for $14.99. We got positive feedback on it. Next up was a Howler Brothers baseball cap that we got in the Goodwill bins. This was a trucker cap. It was green and it had yellow graphic print on it. We paid $1.18 for it and it sold for $21.58. Howler Brothers is a popular brand, so that's something to be on the lookout for. We got positive feedback on that. Next up was an item that we picked up doing retail arbitrage. This was not a good buy. When we got home and further researched it, it just did not have a good sell-through, and this is the first one that we've sold. I think we've bought 3 of these, and I don't think they're going to sell well. This was a Winter Wonderland red silicone baking mat, and it had measurements on it, and then different size circles so you could roll out different pie crusts and things like that into different shapes. This we paid $3.46 for, and it only sold for $12.99, so not much profit there, just not a good pickup. Next up was a Parker County Today, which is a magazine, and it was signed by a local celebrity named Red Stiegel, and that was something that we got from the other business that we own, and it sold for $10.18. We had several copies of this, and I think this was the last one that we had, and it sold. We got positive feedback on that. Next up was some artwork that we got from the other business that we own again. This was a signed print called Light Infantry Combat Air Assault by the artist Paul R. Jones. That we sold for $35.98 on offer to buyer. Next up was a cassette tape, a vintage cassette tape from 1983. It was Sesame Street tape called Early Bird on Sesame Street. We didn't have the case or anything else. It probably was like a book on tape, but all we had was the cassette. And we got that at a thrift store. We paid 27 cents for it. It sold for $8.48. We just generally pick up anything that's Sesame Street because Sesame Street sells really, really well. Even though that didn't sell for much, it sold fast. Sesame Street always does, so we always pick up Sesame Street stuff. Next up was a pair of Vans Boys chambray chino shorts. They were new with tags. We got these at a garage sale for $2 and they sold for a full asking price of $24.99. These did not sell super fast, but we made good money on them. We got positive feedback on them as well. Next up was a Blippi lime green plastic mini recycling bin trash can. I put the keyword dollhouse in there too, but I had so much interest on this toy. And I think Blippi is kind of a Bolo item. People were lowballing me on this over and over again, but I think it's kind of this particular piece, this particular recycling bin is a hard to find item. And so I priced it kind of high. I think I had priced it at, let me see, I think I might have originally priced it at $18.99. And then when we were doing inventory, I think I might have lowered it to $16.99. You will see what I had the price at on our tile over here. But we were getting all kinds of lowball offers on it. And we had so many watchers on this dang recycling bin, but nobody was willing to, pay enough for it. And I just knew that it would eventually sell. And so it did eventually sell for $16.99. We had paid 43 cents for that out of a thrift store toy bag. So anyway, just heads up on Blippi. I think it is definitely something worth picking up. Stick to your guns on the right price because somebody probably will eventually come around and pay the right price for it. Some of those Blippi things might be worth big money. Next up was a pair of St. John's Bay plus size bootcut corduroy pants. They were new with tags. We got these in the Goodwill bins. We paid 61 cents and they sold on best offer for $22. Next up was a really good sale. This we got at that same rummage sale where we got that big bag of cords. This was a pair of Lang men's Mondo Alpine downhill ski boots. And we almost didn't buy these. We had gotten 2 pair of ski boots. I think we paid $5 for both of them maybe. Gosh, I can't remember now. But one of the pair we ended up having to donate. So I have that we paid $5 for this pair, and I'm pretty sure we just paid $5 for both, and I ended up just putting that we paid $5 for these because we got rid of the other pair, and I wanted to account for our purchase price on both. Anyway, the other pair we had to donate because the Velcro was no longer sticky. It had lost its grip. But this pair was still good, and even though it took 2 years for these to sell, maybe not 2 years, maybe a year, they did eventually sell for $89.99, which was our full asking price, and they were heavy to ship, but we made really great money on these. So that was a really good pickup, and I would probably pick up ski boots again. So something to think about. I would probably look at them more carefully and make sure, that the Velcro was still good and all the different parts of them functioned, but worth it, definitely worth it. Next up was that Daiso Disney How You Doin' insulated lunch bag. We had sold this before in a previous What Sold, and it came back because the person said that it was too small, despite the fact that the measurements are very clearly in the title. So it sold again for $10 even, which was a best offer, and we had picked that up for 33 cents. So I think the person who purchased it this time is happy with it, so that's good news. Next up was a Turbis 16-ounce replacement insulated tumbler cup lid in orange. We had gotten this in the Goodwill bins. We picked it up when we were playing Bins Bingo. It was a brand new in the package item. And that sold for $8.78. We had paid $1.18 for it. Probably less if you look at it per weight, but we had averaged out our cost that day. Next up was a vintage 1990 Cabbage Patch doll. It was a first edition preemie doll. We had gotten this off of Facebook Marketplace. I had reached out to a lady who was selling 8 Cabbage Patch dolls. I think I had paid, it was 8 Cabbage Patch dolls for $40, if I'm remembering correctly. but that might not be right. I said on my spreadsheet that I paid $4.44, so I can't remember exactly, how many I had gotten and how that worked out, but that I had said that I had paid $4.44 for this one. So this one sold for $21.99, and I think that was our full asking price. Next up was a Breville nonstick 2-slice panini press. We had sold this previously, and the buyer had opened an INAD claim. And if you had watched that video before, the buyer had claimed that it was scratched on the inside, which it wasn't. It was just mildly discolored from use, as heated items generally do. But we did sell this again, and we sold it for even more this time, which was $64.99. We had paid $2 for this at a garage sale. This buyer was happy with it. Next up was a Brooks & Dunn bonus video collection. It was brand new and sealed. This sold for $11.98 on offer to buyer. We had paid 24 cents for this at a thrift store. Next up was an 11-piece lot of boy crochet hooks. It was just a variety of crochet hooks. I had picked some of them up at an estate sale and some of them up in the Goodwill bins. Lotted all of those together and sold those for $14 on best offer. And we had paid in total $3 for those. We had got positive feedback on that as well. Next up was a genuine AT&T U-verse remote control. We tested it and it worked. It sold for $9.99 for our full asking price. We got that at a thrift store in a big bag of remotes, and we paid 45 cents for that one. Next up was a Barbie Fashion Avenue pair of square toe buckle heels. We got these in a big bag of yellow Barbie shoes one day at the Goodwill bins. And that was just such a great and random find. We sold so many of those yellow Barbie shoes. This buyer paid $11.18 on offer to buyer, and we had said that we paid 61 cents for those Barbie shoes, but in reality, we probably paid like 1 penny. Next up was a Polo Ralph Lauren men's black check 100% cotton poplin bathrobe. It had the pony embroidery on it and everything. We got this for $30 even at an estate sale. No, that's wrong. We sold this for $30 even on best offer, and we got this at an estate sale for $2 even. I would not pay $30 even for that. That would be a bad buy. And finally, I'll go over all of the collectible cards from my husband's personal collection that sold. This week we sold 3 cards for a total dollar value of $7.67. That wraps up our video for this week. So thank you so much for watching. Let us know if you enjoyed this video by hitting the thumbs up button. And if you're not already subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe button with the notification bell turned on so you can be kept informed of all of our future content. Stick around for the next video that's going to pop up right over here, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.